Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those on the West Coast and to everybody in Israel who's listening. We're so glad you are joining us for our latest webinar, Educate a Woman, Educate a Generation, Advancing Women in Leadership, Promoting Gender Equality, and Creating Agents of Change. We feel that this is very timely and we're very happy that you're joining us. As always, questions may be asked by typing in the Q&A box, and we will try to answer as many as possible. So I'd like to introduce our esteemed speakers. Professor Mona Khoury-Kassabri is the Dean of the Paul Baerwald School of Social Work and Social Welfare, head of the University Steering Committee for Accessibility to Higher Education among Arab Students, and the advisor for Minorities Affairs at the Hebrew University. She was also a visiting professor at the University of Toronto for 2 years. Her primary research revolves around issues related to child and youth welfare and cyberbullying. Professor Abuelaish studied medicine at the University of Cairo and earned a diploma in obstetrics and gynecology with the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia, then earned a master's degree in public health, health policy, and management at Harvard University. He was the first Palestinian doctor to receive a staff position at an Israeli hospital, and for many years he worked as a senior researcher at the Gurdner Institute in Sheba Hospital in Israel. Currently, Professor Abuelaish is an associate professor at the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, where he teaches courses in public health. He is also the recipient of many awards, including the Governor General Medallion, the Award of Excellence for Promotion of Human Rights and Peace, and is a 4-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. Randi Druzin, our moderator and board member, is an author and journalist based in Toronto. She has worked at several media outlets, including the National Post and the CBC, and she has written for dozens of publications, including the New York Times, Time Magazine, the Globe and Mail, and the Toronto Star. Based first in Europe and then in Canada, Randi has written on a wide range of subjects. She now covers Canadian politics and culture for US News and World Reports. I'd now like to ask Debbie Dankoff, our National Vice President of Development, to give some background on Hebrew University's partnership with Professor Abuelaish's foundation, the Daughters for Life. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you so much, Ayala, and thank you everybody for being here. Education is a crucial factor in women achieving social parity, economic stability, and independence. And an extensive body of research indicates a significant connection between gender equality and the level of economic and social development of a country. At the heart of achieving gender equality is the education of girls and women, and the removal of barriers to education and opportunities for their advancement. This is why the Canadian Friends of Hebrew University and the Daughters for Life chose to partner in a common mission to raise the necessary funding and promote accessibility to higher education at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem for women from marginalized communities who are too often underrepresented in graduate education. Our current effort is dedicated to placing women in a master's degree program at the School of Social Work and Social Welfare that focuses on research and training on issues of gender-related violence, a growing problem worsened by our current pandemic. We are so pleased that you've joined us today to learn more about opportunities we are working to offer women at the Hebrew University, an institution that itself is dedicated to gender parity and encouraging students from diverse communities to study side by side. As we know, educating a woman today promises a better future tomorrow. Now I'm going to turn it over to Randi.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here today. Izzeldin, it's okay if I call you that? I'll assume that's a yes. I'll start with you today. And I was wondering, to start, you're a prominent scholar, public speaker on peace and development in the Middle East. Can you tell us a little bit about how you arrived at this place in your journey?
Thank you so much. Thanks for the organizers of this event. It's a promising event in this time of the world and the challenge we are facing with COVID pandemic. What shapes and what brought me to this situation is my life experience and my life story. As a Palestinian refugee who was born, raised, and lived in Jabalia refugee camp, and I dreamed to be a medical doctor. So I succeeded. I have to work hard. And that's another message that we need to learn. We need to dream. No one can prevent us from dreaming. So I dream to be a medical doctor, and I have to work hard and to have confidence that I can make it. And with time, I realized the importance of medicine and health and my profession as obstetrician and gynecologist when I started to practice medicine in this world and in Israel in particular and in Palestine. As obstetrician gynecologist in the hospital, where we used to treat all people are equally, without any discrimination to name ethnicity, religion, background, wealth, or anything. What we want for them just to be healthy, to be well, and to recover from the disease. And nothing is more important than to witness the delivery of a newborn baby. If you go to any delivery ward, you can't differentiate between the newborn Palestinian, Israeli, Canadian, American, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Druze. The cry of the newborn baby for me was a cry of hope. A new life is coming. And that's the only situation where the cry is a cry of hope. And it's a sign of life, because the cry of the newborn, it's a sign that the newborn is in good health and in good life. We want these newborn babies to cry at the time of the delivery. So I believed in that through my experience, that health, medicine, and education are the human equalizer, stabilizer, socializer, and harmonizer. And the role of women in times who give life, who nurture life, who raise us, we trust women to raise our children. Why not to give them the right role and the means and the opportunities to make the world a better one? In my life, I am in debt, and only in debt to my mother, to my wife, and my daughters. Without them, I will never achieve what I achieved. And women, are the strongest members in any community, in any society, and even these days, who are more successful. Women and more courageous. Women are courageous and responsible, and they carry the heavy burden in our life. They do their work. They get the pregnancy. They have the children. They raise. They will be the caregivers. So it's time. I say it's time to give women the right means. And the right means is through education, because we can't equalize between the one who knows and the one who doesn't. Education is the right immunizing or vaccination against the challenges we are facing. It's not just to vaccinate against COVID. We want to vaccinate against other social contagious diseases in this world, where women who have a big heart can promote peace, can raise children in a safe, peaceful, healthy environment. That's why I believe in this and will continue to believe in this. And it's not just to talk about it. We need to walk the talk. And that's what is important. And today, really, with this partnership between Hebrew University and Daughters for Life, we are trying to do our part to walk the talk.
Okay, so we'll get to Daughters for Life a little bit more later. For now, I'd like to hear from Mona. Mona, can you tell us about your journey? I understand you come from a disadvantaged neighborhood and that you worked your way up through education. Can you tell me a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so thank you. And thank you for this great event. And I actually totally agree with my colleague Izzeldin. And I think if I can say it like shortly, education saved my life. But because I need to say now longer than that, so I will explain how it changed my life. As you said, I was born in Haifa and grew up in a disadvantaged and very violent neighborhood. And in my elementary school, I went to a public school. But at these days in Haifa, public schools weren't that good. And if I wanted to think of going to higher education, I need to move to private school. And my parents wanted me very much to go to private school, but unfortunately we were not able to afford the tuition of the private school. and I did all the exams, enrollment exams, and I was accepted. And the only obstacle is paying the tuition. So there was an agreement between like the school and my parents that I can study there, but I need to clean the classes at the end of the day in order not to pay the tuition. So I did that, and I think when I did that at these days, all days, I didn't feel that bad about it. I think I did it, and my friends were very helpful, and they never said anything about that to let me feel bad about cleaning the classes. But today, when I'm a mother of two children, my daughter is now in her first year at the university, at the Hebrew University, of course, and my son in his 10th grade, I think it might be very humiliating, and I'm not sure I would be able to put them in this situation because it might be very hurtful. For the long term, I think it wasn't easy. But still, I believe that that period in my life actually shaped who I am and my personality, and affected the way my willingness to succeed, because I noticed how hard I need to work in order to be able to achieve a higher education, from like to graduate from high school, from a very good high school. And then I had to work for 1 year in order to be able to fund my studies. So I worked in 1 year, and then I was accepted for social work at the Hebrew University. And when I graduated with excellency, I was accepted for direct track for master and PhD, and completed both of them together in almost 5 years. And then I traveled for postdoc to Chicago, and here also was another challenge that my husband wasn't able to come with me, but he was very supportive of this step. So I went for the beginning, he came with me and with my 11 months daughter, and we spent the year there, and he was coming each month to help and to visit, but it was very, very challenging year. And I think it was like very difficult. I'm not sure I would recommend anyone to do that, especially in a very cold city like Chicago, windy, and the snow. I'm not sure. It's not easy to be in this weather. So imagine being with a baby there for 1 year when you have to achieve your all achievement in the postdoc and to publish and all these things. So after that, I came back, and I was giving a position at the Hebrew University, at the school that I graduated from. And I was very happy to be in that school. And in 2018, I was nominated the dean of the school that gave me a unique experience and exposed me to the world of social work in all its beauty and complexity. And the school also, one of the main things that I would never forget studying in this school, it gave me the opportunity to express who I am and myself, and to express my national and cultural identity. And today I'm trying together with my faculty and administrative staff to work together to keep this spirit of the school. And that has guided me along my academic path, and to guide us for many years to come. And I think that this is the only way we can succeed, when we give everyone the opportunity to express himself and to accept the others, and as much as we can to increase the abilities for higher education for underrepresented groups.
So Mona, I was wondering what led you to have this interest in the plight of girls and women and gender issues? How did you get there? How did you develop that interest?
Actually, if you think about me being an Arab female, and it is like being a minority within in another minority. As an Arab Palestinian minority in Israel, you belong to ethnic minority, and then you are a female in a traditional society that makes you another minority within the same thing. So I can see all the difficulties that women face during their life. I think that as much as we can, and I would like to say more about the education of women, as much as we can see the increase in numbers of women in the education, we can still see that women in our society face more difficulties than men. And this is why I think, as a social worker, when I looked at these things, I was always wanted to make a change and to empower women to make this change together, not only me. And as I said, I believe that education is one of the best ways to do that.
Mhm.
I can't say it's the only way. There are a lot of succeeded women that they don't have this high education, but I think they are the irregular. We can take it like and say that you can be, so you can take the chance of not having higher education and say maybe I will succeed without that. If you
Yeah.
have higher education, at least you can be safe that you gain this thing, and then you can do other things in your life that maybe they don't need this education or this degree.
Okay. And Izzeldin, what inspired you to establish Daughters for Life Foundation? Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to establish that and what its mission is?
What inspired me to establish Daughters for Life, of course, is life experience and what I experienced in my life as a Palestinian with all of the challenges I faced, because my life was a war. I was fighting all of the time just to survive and to live. And life taught me that nothing is impossible. I know the meaning of the suffering. I know the meaning of poverty deprivation. I don't think much of the audience have experienced to live in a refugee camp and what is the meaning of being a refugee. So what inspired me after the tragedy I faced in my life, in spite of all the achievements that I achieved in my life from nothing, I was scratching in the rocks. After they were killed, a colleague of mine in Israel, he said to me, Izzeldin, the world will forget. What are you going to do? If the world forgets, I will never forget my beloved daughters, Bisan, Mayar, Aya, and my niece Noor. So I thought, what can I do to keep them alive? But not with bullets or with shilling. There are stronger means than these bullets. Because Bisan was in her final year at the university, Mayar was in the middle school, planned to be a medical doctor, and my daughter, Aya, planned and dreamed to be a lawyer, to be the voice of the voiceless. And also my niece planned to be a teacher. And I believed in them, that I was proud of them. And it's a moral responsibility to keep them alive. I wanted to keep them alive because they will never die. But as I said, with what? With wisdom, with courageous, kind words and good deeds. And the answer to that
Wait, may I
tragedy,
interrupt for one moment? I feel
yes,
like I want audience to know about a little bit about your family history. You referred to it about the tragedy. If you could tell us a little bit more, and briefly, just tell us, what happened to your family.
yeah, what happened to my family in what is called war in 2008, 2009, when I was with my children inside my home, under fire from everywhere. And I used to say it, war will never put an end. War is not the solution. I was as informal correspondent to speak loudly, and that's what is needed from all of us. As a medical doctor, when I see a bleeding patient, is to run to stop the bleeding. So it's time for us to speak out against really any violence, against war, against others, and to think of others. Who are they, the others? They are our human fellows. And to save a human life, because killing one as if you killed the world, saving one as if you saved the world. And I know the meaning of life and the meaning of loss. So 16th of January 2009, a quarter to 5 p.m. is the day when the Israeli tank to shell my house, killing 3 daughters and 1 niece, and severely wounding others. And the answer to that tragedy was in my book. I will never be broken. I will never be defeated. I shall not hate. It's not with hatred, but as I said, with wisdom, with kind, courageous, and strong words and good deeds. And nothing is more important than keeping my daughters alive through education of girls and young women from the Middle East, where they carry their spirits, their dreams, their plans, and to achieve their plans and their dreams. And what is the vision and the mission and the objectives of Daughters for Life is to inspire the people. Even in bad things, there are something good. This tragedy, it's up to us, because life is what we make it. Always has been, always will be, not to blame. Take responsibility. And the biggest challenge in our world is individual responsibility. Instead of blaming others, take responsibility and to move forward. So the good thing in this foundation, it's not political, it's to humanize. It's not about the merit of success. It's about the merit of being a human, and to provide these young women who are coming from social, economic hardship. And that's what we need, because I know the meaning of suffering. I know the meaning of poverty and need. If I wasn't offered these scholarships in my life, I will never achieve what did I achieve and where I am now. My parents were not able, even when I was at the school, if the teacher to ask us to have a pencil or anything, my mother, God bless her soul, to say, we are not going to schools. What are we going to do with it? I know the meaning of that. I tasted the suffering, and that's what we call it. The one who looks at the sea doesn't know the sea. Only the one who sinks, who dives and goes inside the sea. So we are coming from the living experience I lived. That's why I am proud of Daughters for Life and the support of the people who came to join us. It's about young women without any discrimination. Muslims, Jewish, Christians, Druze, anyone, Palestinians, Israelis, Jordanians, Syrians, Lebanese. And that's the message I want to spread light and to spread hope instead of pain, to give life instead of death.
Izzeldin, did you have a hard, like your approach has been, I think people would agree, nothing short of spectacular, given what you've endured. I think a lot of people would become embittered and angry, and that would shape the rest of their lives. How was it that you didn't go down that route and instead chose a different approach? Was it something someone said to you, or what was it that made you turn that way?
I remember it from the first second when I saw my daughters killed. I saw them in front of me. I lost faith in the humanity. So the only one, as a person of faith, I directed my face to God. And during that video, which has been broadcasted live, I said, oh God, oh Lord, give me the strength, give me the patience and the wisdom to do the right thing. And thanks God to give me that. So my faith is very helpful. My education and my profession, because in life and in my profession, if a patient died, I don't stay there. I have to move to the next patient.
Yes.
But I have to learn why the first patient died.
Yes.
And to improve it. That's what helped me, because bitterness and anger will never lead me forward. And it's not going to return my daughters back, but I want to keep them alive. And for me, they are not dead. They are only traveling. They are only far away from me. I see them, I talk to them, and I see them in these young women we support in their education. It's not about the biology, it's about the humanity at the same time.
That's incredible. Mona, now back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the research you're currently involved with? Sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, so it's very hard to move to talk about research after what we have heard from Izzeldin.
Yeah, it is definitely.
Yeah, I have to say first that you have, or you need to be a very special person in order not to use your anger for being violent and being pessimistic in this society, and to be very optimistic and trying to make the right thing. as actually it's related to things that I do. I study juvenile delinquency and youth violence. And one of the main things that we notice that anger might lead to violence. And one of the recommendations that we say, and intervention programs that we say, we have to teach youth and children how to deal with violence, with anger, in order not to be violent, because we can't prevent anger. It's a human feeling, and we all express it. But the question is, and this is something that differentiates between people, what you do when you are angry. Do you turn it to violence, or do you just stop and think what I'm going to do? And what Izzeldin just said, he just explained exactly what we try to teach youth. For example, if you got angry because someone humiliated you, so the first response is to go and beat him back, and it will happen a bigger act of violence. Or just to stop, and exactly as my colleague said, I stopped and thought, what is the good solution? And unfortunately, many of the people don't do that. Many people, especially juveniles and youth, they act immediately. And we know also, unfortunately, in family violence issue, this is one of the main things, that when the husband comes home and something happens, he turned his anger, or something happens at work, and he turns his violence against his wife, his children. So this is one of the things. So I study now these days youth violence and juvenile delinquency, and we have a study that we are studying actually violence during children in early childhood with my colleagues Iris Tzadok and Rana Said. And one of the things that we noticed, that lower levels of violence of the children, actually one thing we see that there is violence in these ages, unfortunately. And one of the things that affect this level of violence is the relationship between the mother and the father. If they have a good relationship and a good partnership, what we call it co-parenting, they work together, they agree about the discipline methods they will use with their children. So we see that the mother actually, because we studied only mothers, used less punitive discipline and less psychological control with her children. And in turn, we see that the kids are less violent. So we see, for this example, that we can prevent levels of violence not only by intervening with the kids, that they are very small children. We have to work with the family, because one of the major effects on the children is their parents. And if the parents don't work together, even we are not talking about violent relations between the parents, we are talking about co-parenting, this agreement about the way that you should rear your child, the things that you have to do, how they are arranged, and how do you arrange like the day. Okay, who takes the kids from the kindergarten? That we know, unfortunately, that most of the times women do that. And these are one of the things that we can see that they affect how the children and the mother feels.
Is there a difference between young boys and young girls in the way they respond to discord between their parents?
Actually, one of the interesting things which emphasize the issue of socialization, that there is not a huge gap between females and males in violence and in the way they perceive things, and they are affected of things when they are very young. This gap starts to open and being larger when they go to school and when they get older, which means that we actually make this gap, and it's not something that they were born with. The only thing that we can see, that we call it indirect violence, that girls, because they develop more their language faster than boys, they use it more. The issue, like the kind of violence that need language, but also this gap closes very fast when the boys learn how to talk. But the physical violence, which is almost similar when they are very young, it becomes much larger when they are older, with boys being more violent than girls, which emphasizes the importance of socialization process that boys go through and became more violent as a society. We teach them that they need to be assertive and all these kind of things, and in turn, they become violent.
Yeah, I think that's across various cultures. It's not specific to one culture.
Yeah, it's all in every culture, because we know that internationally boys are much more involved in all kinds of violence than girls.
Yeah. Izzeldin, turning now to Daughters for Life Foundation, can you tell us the stories of one or two individuals who have been young women who have benefited from Daughters for Life?
There are, of course, all of them are impressive stories because they are selected on certain criteria. And many of them that I impressed about their stories and what did they succeed and what did they achieve in their achievements. I remember one time, one of the scholarships at the University of Haifa, we went there to give them the scholarships. And she was an Israeli Jewish Ethiopian young woman. She's coming from poor community, and you know the situation among the Ethiopian Jewish women in Israel. She said, I want my father to be proud of me. Can I bring him? And then to ask, who is giving me this award, this scholarship, a Palestinian from Daughters for Life, and what happened to them? She was in tears, and her father was proud of her as a simple father, Ethiopian, Israeli Jewish man, to come to get this award in the presence of his daughter. This touched me because I remember it. When I graduated from Harvard University, I wanted my parents. I wanted my children to attend the commencement, but they were not there. And that's a painful moment for us. But I went back. I want them to be with them. The second, also, when we gave award to another Israeli Arab woman, and it was the ceremony at King David Hospital, at King David Hotel in Jerusalem, in the presence of the Premier Kathleen Wynne. After we gave the award, the father is coming and to say to me, today you are giving my daughter the award, but you don't know that you are the one who delivered her at Soroka Hospital. I delivered her at the Soroka University Hospital, and now she is getting and receiving Daughters for Life award. And that's what is needed, to see it in the smile, in the families, how they acknowledge what did they do, how we saved these young women to be proud of them as leaders. One of these stories is a student from Lebanon who came here. We supported her to study in the States, to have their undergraduate degree, then to have a master's degree from Brock University. Now she is doing her PhD at Guelph University. And that's the impact. That's what we need. And concerning, honestly, what you said about anger, about hatred, anger is acute, is coming and leaving. We should be angry about what is going on in this world in a positive way, to take action, to motivate us, not to be angry in a negative and destructive way, but hatred. And that's my main research. Hatred is a contagious, destructive disease to the one who is impacted by it, who is afflicted by it, and even to the community. The antidote of hatred is education and success.
Do you find that from what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that the impact of the Daughters for Life isn't just the individuals, the women and the girls who are involved, but it affects their entire families in a way. Is that accurate?
Yes, Daughters for Life, it's about, to join Daughters for Life family, because Daughters for Life is a family, and we are trying to bring all people together, come to join us to Daughters for Life family, even in the selection process. We are not choosing the students. We are not selecting only the students. We interview the family. We meet the parents. We talk to their parents, because we want to build the trust, good relations between the Daughters for Life, the student and the family and the community. And that's the impact we want to have concerning Daughters for Life. To go
so
beyond.
There has to be buy-in from the whole family, not just from the individual.
And the community. Honestly, these days we are in the process to select a few students, scholars for Daughters for Life. Very few scholarships, but how many candidates do we have? More than 200 candidates. It's
wow.
Spreading in the Middle East. So the need and the demand is huge, but the supply is limited. I hope we can offer all of these scholars, and all of them are great, and their families, they are in need.
So now one theme I'm getting from hearing both of your comments is the importance of higher education. That seems, to be very important. Mona, I was wondering if you could tell me what you're doing at Hebrew University to increase access to higher education.
So actually, I totally agree with my colleague Izzeldin that education is the way we can change our society. And because I strongly believe in that, I am in a position, in my other position, not only the dean, I'm the consultant for minority affairs for the Hebrew University president, and together with the university management and the dean of student office, we are trying to implement a program to increase access for Arab students and other underrepresented students to be at the university. And fortunately, we were very successful to increase the numbers of Arab students at the university. In the 5 years, we have increased from 11% to 16%, which is a huge increase. And mainly we have increased the numbers of students from East Jerusalem. And as you can see, it's not an easy thing. And when you think about students from East Jerusalem who are coming to the Hebrew University, they are coming from two different societies. The people who live in East Jerusalem, they are not even citizens of Israel. And we have been trying during the years to convince them to come to the Hebrew University. And fortunately, lately we were able to increase their numbers. And now we have in a pre-academic year, more than 500 students.
Wow.
When we had only 5 years ago, only 80 students. So you can imagine the increase of the numbers. And if we are talking about a need for education, I don't see any other population who are in more need than this population for education, because we know that without the education in the Hebrew University, which they need to speak Hebrew, they can't work in Jerusalem, in West Jerusalem. So we don't only give them the opportunity to have education, we are giving them the opportunity also to have work after that. And one of the good things that we see that I'm not sure it's good, it depends who is looking at that 70% of those who come, they are females and from East Jerusalem. So there is something that you look at the society and you say it's a traditional society, how come more females than males? But this is something that is going on in the Arab society lately, that we can see in the last decade that more and more women are attending higher education and getting education, and less men. This way I said I'm not sure it's that good, because when we have these women are coming to the universities, the males are not coming, especially in the societies that they are in most need to go to education, like the Bedouin society and the Arab society in East Jerusalem. And we see that there are more females than males in all the degrees. But when we look at the faculty numbers, also in the Jewish society and the Arab society, we see that there are less females than males.
So why is that? If you don't mind me interrupting, why is it that there's more women from East Jerusalem than men coming to Hebrew University? What accounts for that discrepancy?
I think because male can work, or they are perceived as a workforce for their families to support them. We are talking about families that are very, very poor. So if you have to choose who is going to study, the girls can go study and the males go to work. So this is why they are sending more the girls. This is why I said, from my point, it's good that the females are coming, but I know that the males are not coming because they have to work and they will not get educated.
But then ultimately these females will probably become the mothers to males, and that could, be helpful,
exactly.
10 or 20 years down the road.
One of the things that we can see that when these females will become mothers, they will send their males and females, and because also they will have the education and they will have the ability to work, not only to be educated.
Yeah. Okay. How are we doing for time? I feel like we've been speaking quite a while.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah. Concerning women at universities, as in Canada, the percentage of women at universities is more than men everywhere. And concerning the Palestinian women, really, in many universities, there are more than the men because they are more focused and more successful in the high schools. That's why they go and they got accepted at universities more than the men. For any university, even in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, you will find more women than men. Even at the high school results, when they have the high school, more young women are succeeding, and even from the top 10 in Palestine, those successful, most of them are women. So women are more focused and they are more aspiring for education. That's why I think more women in East Jerusalem, they go to university than the men.
You know, Izzeldin, it's the same trend for females, Arab females from all over Israel, that more women come to the university than males in all the degrees. And this is amazing because we know.
Because of their success.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Ayala, do you want to do some of the questions or would you like me to do them?
It's up to you.
No, go ahead. I've spoken quite a bit.
Okay. So Muna, I actually have a question for you. One, what we're doing obviously in our partnership with Daughters for Life is we are raising money for scholarships for women to go study as for a degree in social work. And you do have research that you're doing now on gender violence. So it's kind of a two-pronged question that I have here. Has your research noticed a difference in families where there is gender violence or where children go on to higher education? Is there a difference when the mothers are more educated?
Yeah, actually, we can see that education is a protective factor for violence in all ages, not only in family. If we look at students at school, we can see that students who have positive perception about the school, they are committed to the school, even if we don't look at their grades. We know that students with more commitment to school achievement are involved less in violence. So we know that the issue of education is much more affected even when you are very young at school, and it continues with you for later life. And we know that we have two things that we say about gender violence. We say it can happen in every family, but we should be aware that it can happen in every family. But if you look at the percentage, it doesn't happen equally in every family. There are protective factors that can protect women of being or of leaving the violent relationship. We know that independent women who have the ability to leave the relationship and to be, to be divorced, if you are educated and have work, you have more ability to do that. And if you are very dependent on your husband and in his work and in his funds, so you have more difficulties to take this step and to leave this violent relationship. So we know that we should be careful when we say that it happens to everyone, because it's true. Yesterday, a day before, a woman was killed in Israel by her husband, who is a policeman, and she is family therapist. So this is something that says it can happen in all the Israeli society. It's not something that happens only in Arab families. But if we look at the number of women who were killed during the last year, most of them were Arabs. So we can't ignore this fact and say it can happen everywhere, and don't look at the risk factors that increase the likelihood of this happening in some specific families, especially families from low socioeconomic status, that they have more difficulties, more anger, more frustration, that in many cases they don't have any other way. They didn't learn, and no one give them the intervention, that good intervention to help them get out of this cycle of violence without using violence.
Right. So what is the ultimate objective, or what do you hope to gain from the research that you're doing around gender violence?
So we have several levels of things that we would love to achieve. First of all, to understand what is happening, because in the past, a lot of research was focused on physical violence. Now we know that it's not the only violence. And if we focus only on physical violence, we are missing much of what is going on, because we know that psychological violence is very, very it has very negative effects on the woman, and in the old research we didn't focus on that. Or we know that cyber violence, that the husband follows the wife and opens her account and all these things. So if we don't adapt to the new things that happening, we can miss the information, what's going on and what kinds of violence we know. So if we don't know what kind of violence there is, we can't treat the violence. And the other things we have, I'm not doing it myself, but my colleague like Professor Muhammad Hajihia from my school, he is also studying international kinds of violence and in Israel and in Arab countries and other Arab countries, and he is comparing between them to see whether there is something that is related to some country which is not related to other countries, and how can we actually develop culturally competent intervention to deal effectively with violence, because we can't take what is going on in Canada and bring this intervention and implement it in East Jerusalem, which is a totally different culture. So this is one of the major things that we are trying also in our school in many different fields, to teach that we need to be culturally competent and know what is going on in the specific society that we are treating in order to be able to give appropriate a solution that also the society will accept that. Otherwise, it will not work.
Can I interrupt and ask one quick question? And that is, what would be the difference? Can you give one concrete example about how outreach or intervention in that way would be different in Canada than it might be in East Jerusalem, taking into consideration the different cultures and the different settings?
If you talk about the relationship with the police officers, we know that there is a huge tension between the population in East Jerusalem and the police forces. So I'm not saying that you don't need to go to the police, but it depends when and how you can do it. And in Canada, because there is not this much of problem, you can do it, even though I know that there are some groups in Canada, if we talk about the Aboriginals, that they might have similar difficulties as we have the Palestinian Arabs in Israel. But if you talk about the general population in Canada, they will not have this difficulty to go to the police. You compare it with the population in East Jerusalem.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you speak about violence. Violence, it has been well known and acknowledged as a public health issue. And when we want to speak about violence, no one is born violent. We are the product of nature and the environment and the context in which we live. And of course, there are different kinds of violence. If you want to deal with violence in a superficial way, even I can say violence is induced, and we are talking about certain types of violence, but we didn't mention even the type which is behind all kinds of violence, which is the structural violence, which is hidden and we don't see it. So if we want to deal with violence, not to deal with it in a fragmented way and to focus on the child, on the son, on the mother or the father, these are members and parts of the community, of the environment and the society in which they live, and even the political, the economic, the financial situation. And that's what I think we need. It's time for us to have a new reform and a new creative and comprehensive interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary collaborative approach in order, and being honest, if we want to do it, to face violence in that way and to acknowledge it and the causes behind it, the root causes behind violence, then we can put an end to this violence.
So you're saying a more holistic approach?
Yes, not in a fragmented way.
Exactly, because this is exactly what I said. When you look at the violence of the children that I said about the study that we did, and you see that the violence of these very, very young children is a result of the relationship that is happening between their parents. It's not something that only related to their features. We know that impulsive children are more violent, but we can't ignore the society and the family and all other things that are affecting the children. So we have to build a holistic approach in order.
So it's like the parents are affecting the children, but other factors are affecting the parents. So it does go, there's a ripple effect, isn't there?
Exactly. If you talk about like unemployment, which is might be a factor that affecting the family relationships, and then it affects the children.
Yeah.
The
So I'm going
the schools, the living conditions many determinants of violence which provoke and trigger violence in any community.
So I'm going to interrupt here because I think that we can like take this off for another, our webinar, because honestly, I think it's systemic in every culture in different ways, in different communities.
Mhm.
And I think, unfortunately, look, everybody is approaching it in a fragmented way just because that is what we can do. But I think it's wonderful and hopeful that we create these partnerships. And Muna's sitting there in Israel, and Izzeldin is in Toronto, and we're here in Montreal. And I actually do have one question and one comment to read from the Q&A, and then I'm going to hand it over to Debbie to sum it up. Very inspirational. Janice wrote, as an older woman who raised 2 children with no financial help post-divorce, I can only say that I'm so grateful to my parents who tried to give me a private education, but not possible on account of anti-Semitism. However, I persevered and became a physiotherapist. Motto, all women must gain educational independence. So I think it truly does show the impact of where you can go with that. And I have a quick question for Professor Abuelaish. I think you have to answer it really quickly because this is, I think, very broad. But Herbert Sachs writes, over the years, I've read articles of your life story, tragic yet amazing resilience. Please tell us how your message of humanity, hope, and peace has been accepted by both Hamas and Palestinians. So maybe you can just kind of sum it up.
Yeah, it's important. My message, I believe in it. And it's one message. It's not the colored message that I say it here in Toronto or in Tel Aviv or any place or in Palestine, in Gaza Strip. This stereotype or misinformation we think. What I said here, I say it even more severe in harsh way in Palestine, in Gaza. So they acknowledge it and they value it highly. And I encourage you to read many articles by many Palestinian leaders who are proud of what do I do. So it resonates with them and it finds open ears and minds.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. I'm going to hand it over to Debbie.
Thank you so much again. This was incredible. I was asked to kind of close this up because this is in fact an incredibly important fundraiser that we are doing to raise the monies necessary so that we can meet the demand, so that we have more supply of these fellowships than we do have demands. And often when, in fundraising, when you need to do a case for support, you need to put the passion into it. I don't need to do that. This came across the entire time, just listening to Mona, to Izzeldin, to Randi. The passion behind this tells us how important it is. And so I hope that each and every one of you will think about supporting this program, getting more information about it, getting more information about the fellowships that we're working on developing with Dr. Abuelaish, and also the program in social work, which we touched upon, but we didn't get the full breadth of, which is actually quite incredible because it's about students training the general public on how to identify and respond to gender-based violence. So thank you all so much for being here. And again, it is my pleasure to get to work with these incredible academics, and we look forward to hearing from you very soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.